Hi guys, welcome to the LOR report. Today we're going to be interviewing Aaron, who was the lead designer or lead project for the Eternal patch that we have just experienced. But yeah, would you like to introduce yourself and let us know what you've been doing?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Aaron. I am a game designer on Legends of Runeterra, formerly a member of the game analysis team. Been here on Runeterra about 3 years this month, actually. Uh, and yeah, I was the lead designer for the first Eternal Balance patch and kind of did some stuff leading to what we want Eternal to be. Besides that, I've worked on some of the flex cards, variety cards that have been releasing this year, and some forthcoming. And I am the design lead on the community card kitchen. I think those are probably the big things I've done that have been seen so far.
Okay, cool. I think the community card kitchen, by the way, is a very cool thing to have for the community. As we know so far, all we know is that it's definitely going to be a Freljord card. So it'll be
Yep.
interested to see how that sprouts into whatever we end up having.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited for it. It's a really cool thing, and I love that we get to do that. And I know there's going to be some really awesome ideas, and I'm excited to see the stuff that we're going to get from players.
Yeah, perfect. So, as usual with these interviews, I went to Twitter and Reddit to pull questions from the community, and each one gets a little bit more complex. That's how I've decided to go through these ones. So we'll start with the first one, which I think is pretty easy. Is what is the team's overarching goals for the Eternal format?
Yeah, Eternal is a space. First and foremost, we want it to be distinct. We want it to be different than something like our standard format, where standard is going to kind of be the core lore, more creature combat focus, try and keep the power level kind of to a baseline we've had it at before, uh, that type of thing. Compared to Eternal, where we're hoping to let slightly wilder ideas run wild. That little bit of higher power level lets you, you know, brew, do weird things, capture those special moments. Really let you play with as many cards as possible in as many ways as possible and be kind of that brewer's paradise, which so far it's doing pretty well. The Eternal meta has been shaken up pretty regularly over the past couple weeks of Eternal ranked. New decks are popping up regularly, coming to the top, being pushed back down, and that's really awesome, and I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, perfect. I was gonna say, especially towards well, recently we're recording this on the Thursday after the Runeterra Open on the weekend, and there was a wide variety of decks. I think the most common one was the Samira Seraphine one,
Yep.
but it wasn't just like a hey everyone's bringing these decks. It was a wide range of we're gonna bring this because this beats that and this beats that one. So it was all around. Like you had the strong decks, which every meta's going to have, but it was a very diverse deck pool. I'd probably say.
Yeah, I think it did a good job of showcasing kind of Eternal, especially as the first open. There's a lot of room for that to grow and change, and being like the first competitive space for people to play Eternal. I'm sure next time has a chance to look completely different as people adapt to this one and things that are played. The Seraphine Samir deck is one of the most popular decks right now, and it's pretty good. Uh, but I'm not even sure that deck was like that popular a week or two ago, and it's really cropped up uh, from before the open has now become this big thing that looks like a thing players can attack, and I hope we see that churn keep going with it.
Yeah, definitely. So what we will do now is we'll move on to the second question, which is how do you measure the effectiveness of the balance patch? Do you primarily focus on win rate, the player outcry, or comments from the pro players?
So that's a interesting question because I think it comes with kind of this baseline assumption that we listen to like any of those more than others is like a balance patch as a whole, or like we view balance patches as something that is pass or fail on one of those axes, and that's not really true. uh, every card in a patch kind of has its own goals and the reasons we're buffing it. So to kind of briefly break down like the 4.5 patch, we did buffs to a lot of uh, cards that players loved previously that were maybe a little too strong for standard, and we've kind of brought them back. Things like Draven or Poppy, um, concurrent timelines, which maybe is its own set of problems, but those cards were pulled in as like, yeah, we want to give players the ability to play with these cards that they once enjoyed, but we took away from them. Uh, Things like Out of the Way being cost reduced from 5 to 4 mana, which is about as big as a buff as we can give a card, is just taking a full mana off of it. Uh, Something like that doesn't always have a loud response anywhere. It doesn't have like a player outcry, or there's not really pro comments on it because it's just kind of a bit better and more fun. And maybe it's not crushing win rates, but seeing the card's play rate go up a little bit, and seeing people post a brew or two with that card on social media, and just knowing that, yeah, we made this card better, and the people that enjoy it now get to feel like they're having more fun because the card is a little better and they get to do their thing a little bit more. um, that's a much harder thing to measure in like that realm of like effectiveness and what matters. um, so yeah, depending on the card, going back to like timelines really, really briefly, that change did come from, we care about win rate and player outcry a lot because we ended up reverting that one for those reasons. And it was winning too much, and uh, was doing potentially harmful things to the metagame. So definitely is more of like a card by card basis. And each of those cards can have really specific goals for why we did them.
So, talking about the metagame on the timelines, would that be something with the decision of players could have potentially brought 3 timelines decks? And it's something that you guys were like, yeah, as long we don't mind the card being good, but we don't want it to be like that good where it's just, all right, I need to put this card in every single deck kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. We don't want any card to be that good where like the outcome is, oh, the correct thing to do is to bring 3 decks based around this single card. That means we've messed up pretty severely, I think. There's not a ton of times that's ever occurred. I think you could point to something like Champion Strength, where some people brought 3 Champion Strength decks to Worlds, uh, and that card got nerfed. And we're trying to avoid those situations because it really leads to a kind of monotonous gameplay experience. Even though a card like Timelines is reasonably high variance and the game's texture can feel different every time because you're picking different units, ultimately, if you play against 3 of them, you look back and you're like, those were all Timelines games, great, and they end up feeling pretty samey. So we really don't want the top competitive levels to feel samey. I think that's something that can happen pretty easily in a card game metagame, and we try really aggressively to make that not the case.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think a lot of people were quite pleased when the tweet was released to be like, hey, we're sorry this happened. We're gonna go back to the 2 mana, and the card is still playable. It definitely got. I think there was one person who brought 3 decks in EMEA, off the top of my head, and they either got second place or they won. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but the card was still strong. It still did exactly what it wanted to do, but it wasn't as oppressive as, oh, I'm gonna go and play my Runeterra Open and I'm going to run into 3 lots of timelines on every single person because everyone's trying to win.
Yeah, I do think it's cool when someone is like, oh, I think this card is still great. I can still bring 3 of this deck and maybe get that edge when other people think it's actually much worse because of this nerf. That's cool when there's that difference of opinion on where power level of a card lies. So one person bringing it and doing well is not that bad. I think that's cool. I like seeing that occasionally. Now, if we go to the next Runeterra Open and a bunch of people bring 3 timelines decks still, that's probably a sign that something is still not great and we maybe need to take another look.
Yeah, it's just the weight of the way that the card is designed. It's very hard to. From my point of view, it seems like a very hard card to balance because if it's good, it's really good, and then if it's bad, it's like really bad. Like it's going to be one of those where you're going to have to find the point where it's perfect, and until you do that, it's going to be either one or the other.
Yeah, and there are some cards where the point dramatically shifts on one side or the other. There are cards where their happiest place is actually like not great, or like 49% win rates or whatever. Um, I think a card like Concurrent Timelines has caused a lot of players a lot of frustration because it is pretty high variance, and it does change the texture of the game in a way that the person playing it usually thinks it's really fun. It's cool. I'm playing different units every game. I feel like I'm kind of cheating because I'm getting this ability, but I get to turn it into a big thing. And that's really awesome. And if Timelines is one of those cards that it is cool when it's good, but that also loses some of the charm a little bit. So uh, people that really love that play experience are going to have that fun either way. But now, I think if players play against Timelines today, maybe they'll be a little more burnt out or frustrated. And that kind of sucks because Timelines is an awesome card. Uh, and that's always the fine line we're really trying to tightrope walk with any card that plays outside of that normal box of lore. Is this too good as to be game warping and become very stale versus this is good enough to be very fun and people want to play it and enjoy themselves with this cool new thing. Timelines being a bit of an older thing, but coming back up with Eternal, fell into that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's when the new cards like the Weapon Masters came out, and it's the old stuff comes with the new stuff, and it's like, oh, these work really well together.
Right. Yeah, it is, and that's awesome feeling too when that occurs. It's like, oh yeah, this old card is now really good because we have these Weapon Masters, and we can put them together. And oh, which Weapon Master is the best for this? Well, maybe Combat Cook because it forges, and what regions do I do with this? In that moment of experimentation is awesome. Some of it kind of turns out that like the experimentation for a card like Timelines, when it's good, is actually, oh, there's a bunch of things you can do and they're all slightly too good probably, and that's not a great place to be.
Yeah, it's good that you guys addressed it though, because you did say at the start of the year, like I think it was towards the start of the year was when you guys started doing a bit more hot fixing. I think the first one was Champion Strength. You've done it with Momentous Choice now. There was just stuff that you were like, hey, there's stuff that we are clearly not happy with. You guys have said stuff about it. Champion Strength at 8 mana was a bit strong, and it was just all right, we need to push it back a little bit. And overall, I think all of the hot fixes have been really good so far. So I think the community will agree with me on that one, that hot fixes are good, and we would like to see more.
Yeah, I've been really happy with the ones we've done so far, and the fact that they are causing that, a good player response and are creating better metagames definitely leads to the argument that we should be doing more. And maybe when hopefully these situations don't arise, because that means we've created potentially something a bit more balanced. But when something gets pretty rough, I think we are always open to that option. It's something we discuss every time.
So the next question is one that has been asked a couple of times, but it may have changed with over the last month with Eternal being open. Does the team have any new plans to keep the ranked Eternal mode open for the full cycle, the full 3-month cycle that we currently use?
Currently, no. Which I know is something a lot of people are unhappy to hear. They like ranked Eternal and is something they want to play more. But we are still looking at the data, seeing how popular it is. We had a good influx of players into it for ranked, and that's awesome. I think we saw what we were hoping to see, and that players do enjoy playing the format. But it still has problems, and they're the same problems we kind of figured they would be from the start. Things like queue times. We know that players are running into situations where a gold player is playing against a diamond or masters player, and that's we have a problem where we are splitting the two queues and we are dividing the player base, and it really feels like there's maybe not enough there to support it quite yet. And we're trying to figure out the way to make that happen. We are definitely looking at all of our matchmaking. We're looking about, is there, what factors do we need to change to make sure we're not giving that poor player experience? We value incredibly highly things like, you shouldn't be in the queue for more than 2 minutes, like ever. We want you to be able to play the game on the bus while you're riding somewhere, and get your game done and be off and like have that moment of fun. So it is like a fine tightrope to walk. It's definitely not something we're closing the door on. It is a conversation we are having. It is something that I would like to see is like we have both of those open. We have those places for players to be able to compete in their way at all times. but is a really tough thing to solve, and it is something that we are looking into.
Yep, I think that's a very fair response. There's looking from your guys' point of view, it does make sense to why it is the way it is. The last thing you want is people waiting 5-10 minutes for a queue time, only to be a bronze player, like a genuine bronze player, going against high plat, diamond masters, whatever it has to be.
Right, and that actually leads to people disliking the format. If you come in and your first couple games you're paired against someone that is, at a way higher rank, and you don't have a good time, the player higher rank probably doesn't have a good time because they're not playing against someone kind of on their level. It just ends up being a bad experience for everyone, and someone can walk away from that being like, yeah, Eternal sucks, why am I playing this format? And that's not the impression we want to give, and that is not the impression I think the format actually has when people are playing against people of the same rank and people are getting to play kind of the decks they want, and have that experience that Eternal does try and give you.
Yeah, perfect. So this next question, it's a bit of a long one, but I'll just read it out and then we'll go there. After this last balance patch, do you plan on testing another balance strategy for the Eternal that focuses on buffing a lot of the rarely used cards, or do you plan on sticking with the reverts of the cards that were released in the past? So I think with this one, it was in reference to the Plaza Guardian, the Poppy, the Draven timelines, everything that got reverted from when it was released or was buffed in the past, to buffing cards that you barely don't see anymore. Whether it be they got nerfed so far down, or just cards that were just never good to begin with.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give you a bit of kind of what I was thinking and planning for this patch. So this is our first Eternal ranked season. We don't really have data exactly what it's going to look like. We can guess based off of like previous standard. We've added some new cards, some big players, you know, things like Set, Samira, Coins. All of those could be reasonably big players. We've had some balance changes since then. Um, so it was tough to kind of guess exactly what the format's going to look like on first blush. On top of that, you know, I wanted Eternal to be a place that players are excited to go to. And what's an easy way to get excitement is like, oh, these cards that maybe you can't play anymore, or maybe ended up being a little weak because of nerfs. Let's bring them back up into this power level. Let's let you enjoy that higher power. Kind of lets you showcase what Eternal is about. Like, yeah, 3/3 Draven is okay here. Maybe not in standard, but this is the place where that should be okay. Same thing with something like Poppy. Tried a bunch of things within that space. That's how you end up with stuff like timelines. Uh, and I'm not sad about timelines occurring. I think if we were not making changes that could lead to something like that, then we probably haven't pushed hard enough. If we never push that envelope and reach states like that, then you kind of just get a boring outcome for never pushing that slate. However, though, that was just for the first balance patch. We took kind of the low hanging fruit, made those better, kind of set the baseline for Eternal. Seems to have worked out reasonably well. There's good metagame spread. Reasonable number of archetypes are playable. People seem relatively happy. So now we get to be like, all right, baseline's here. What can we do to bring the things that are below that up to it? And that's probably going to be the focus of like the next Eternal balance patch that we go for is what are those underplayed archetypes? What are the potentially like meme decks that could be fun if they were pretty good and we think people would enjoy on a larger scale. We did try and do that lightly with stuff like Out of the Way because it was, a card that had a lot of room to grow. So we were pretty confident that it was safe and easy to do so. That is definitely like the thing we want Eternal to be in the long run is can we make all of these rotated cards powerful and fun? And not everything can be the best, but we don't want you to go into a ranked queue and play a deck that's something like Puff Caps, Eternal Puff Caps. I see people love playing that deck. I see it semi reasonable amount. We want you to feel like you are playing the game. We don't want you to feel like your deck is unplayable, even if you're not always winning. If you're winning, great, that's a good outcome too. But we just want you to have fun with those cards. And if they're too bad, then you're just not having fun, and we're well aware of that.
Yeah. So, and just to like add on to that is the balance patches for Eternal will always come after the World Qualifier, won't they? For like the start of the Eternal season, as we'll call it.
That is currently the plan, at least like the Eternal focused ones. Whether we'll put some small Eternal changes in the other patches, that's yet to be seen. We have the option if we feel like something at Eternal has we feel like something needs to change, or we have a buff that we're really excited about. We're willing to do them at those other times. But the design time and focus is going to be there primarily before the Eternal balance patches. Getting into that, to the question of cards that were maybe, players did not see a lot of weaker cards get better. I think that is something that we wanted to do, and we did try to do. One of my big focuses on the patch, my number one goal actually, was to give the Vlad redesign that players have been really asking for. It was one of the things we called out as something we wanted to do early on, and it is the first thing we tried to do. What ended up happening?
I was going to say, is that with the Crimson Disciple then? Was that a sneak peek at a possible... this is where it's going to possibly end up going towards then?
Right. So those two changes were together in like a bundle, and there were some other ones. We wanted to create that package that's like, oh, this is the package that'll bring Vlad back. We redesigned him slightly, buff up a couple of the Scars units, and maybe that is an archetype that is Eternal viable. We did run into some issues, obviously, because there is no Vlad. Patch times are tight, and we put a lot of effort into it. But Vlad is a really hard champion to redesign for us. He has a very specific archetype. He wants to be a Scars champion. Vlad currently has like a pretty specific set of flavor and things around him. He's a vampire. This is how he works. And a lot of changes we tried ended up causing people to be like, yeah, this card is cool, but old Vlad's actually kind of cool too. And I'm sad old Vlad is gone. The current Vlad isn't like a weak card definitionally. When you play Vlad with a full board, it's incredibly strong. You deal 5 damage to the opponent, and he's 5 power and fearsome, and it's very, very good. It's just those situations don't come up a ton. So there's a fine line to walk of how do we give players a better Vlad that maybe feels a little better while not taking away that power you feel when you get that full Vlad and you hit their Nexus for 5 and you see the blood go up and you tear it away and you drain and you heal, and it's a great feeling. So we couldn't quite get there. That doesn't mean we're not going to try again, and that doesn't mean we're putting Vlad down or putting down the Scars archetype. It is just sometimes you don't have enough time for things. And there's the rest of the patch. I wanted to make sure we had other things in there. And when it comes to a point where you have to make that decision of, is this the best Vlad we could ship? And the answer is not quite. I would rather wait and give players the best Vlad we can ship at some point rather than give them a mediocre Vlad now. And it probably just stays that way for a long time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that, because there was one thing that I did see quite a lot was that people were upset that you were like, hey, we are going to do this, and then it never came. So I think this is like a good thing of like, hey, we did try to do it. It's just like the reason you said, we don't want to give you something that's not going to be perfect. And I think having that weak buff, or if you just were like, hey, here's the Eternal patch, it's Vladimir, and then nothing else changed, I think people would have been like, oh, okay. I think people have enjoyed the fact that we've got Draven, we've got Poppy, we've got timelines that came back for a week. I think that they would be a lot more understanding, and they can maybe look forward to Vladimir getting that redesign that was promised.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of just the place lore is at. Is we're in an era of experimentation and innovation, and we're trying to make things better, and we're trying to do more. And sometimes when you try and do more and make better, you don't succeed, and that's just part of any type of creative anything. So those things will happen, but it is all in pursuit of actually releasing things that are great and are exciting and will make people happy, because that is always the ultimate goal.
Yep. Okay, and we will go to the last question, which was how has the community reaction to the format release, the timelines nerf, and the double open, so we've only had one at the time, so the open that's happened affected the team's view of what people want from the format?
Yeah, I think it's something that it hasn't really changed our view. Uh, More in the line, things have kind of gone as we expected. You know, players have enjoyed Eternal for what it is. They like the slightly different experience. They want it to be more different in some ways. So things like the timelines nerf do cause an amount of frustration. We understand that, okay, something like timelines still may be a bit too far into the this is wacky and fun, but it shouldn't be the best thing. You know, we want wacky and fun to be good and playable in Eternal, but there is still a cap to that. So that is kind of what we expected going in, and we really are just trying to feel out those places. Like, what is the bar? What makes people the happiest? What's going to bring the most players in that really want to love this format? And I think this was a really great first step. And I think it showed us a lot of things about those levels, and it showed us that the answer is like, yeah, keep course. We know what we're doing. We have a pretty good plan. We believe this can be something that is special and different, and uh, we have no reason yet to deviate. Now, if there ever comes a time where we realize we've gone way too far and there is different sentiment or things like that, we're always willing to back up and change course and figure that out. This is a format for players, for game designers. We want people to play our game. That's what I get my joy from doing it. So if I'm making something you don't like, then yeah, I don't want to keep making that, and I want to make it different and better for you.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing for players to understand. Like, you're not trying to make us hate the game. You want us to make us love it and play the game
Right.
for many days, for many months, for many years.
Right. So right now it seems like people love it, keeping the course going forward. Please keep letting us know. We want to know. We're trying to do the best thing possible, and we think we're going right.
Okay. And since that was the end of the questions, I wanted to ask: was there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Let people know. Maybe it's a card that you want people to play. Just like, hey, go and play this card. Try and make a deck around it.
Oh, that's so tough. That my personal thing is from my small time working on Jack internally and working with coins players. I think coins Jack set coins is a good deck. I think people are sleeping on it and they're not building it quite right. I think there's room there. You know, maybe I'm out of touch, but I seem to win with it and have fun with it. So hopefully at least one person takes another look at it. It's like, maybe Aaron's right. We can do something here.
Maybe we'll see it in the Runeterra Open if this video goes before it. That'd be cool if there was a Jack set deck that made it into at least the top 64. Someone was like, I'm going to try this for like a couple of games. And they're just like, maybe Aaron was right. She got everything right.
Yeah, coins are awesome. I love seeing coins and I love taking big turns. So like, I want to see more people do that. You know, we have people doing it with Karma, but I want to see it with more. I think there's a lot of room there.
Yep. Okay, so that's all for the questions then. Thank you very much for your time. Hopefully we can do another interview in the future, maybe after the next balance patch for the Eternal format. We can get your views after a couple of weeks of that's going on. And yeah, hopefully we can see you in the future. And thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, I'm glad I could come in and talk. Thank you so much for having me. This was good.